Welcome to the Unapologetic with Jannine MacKinnon podcast, your go-to place for approachable conversations around sacred sexuality and conscious relationships. I'm your host, Jannine MacKinnon, certified trauma-informed sex, love, and relationship coach who's on a mission to support 1 million women and couples to experience deeper connection and more expansive pleasure inside and outside the bedroom. This is the space to go deep, to dive below surface level relationships and mess sex and explore the sacredness that sexuality and conscious relationships have to offer. Because deep connection, spiritual sexuality, full body orgasms, and transmuted sexual energy are available to everyone. And I'm here to serve the collective, to provide the knowledge, wisdom, and tools to access them. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful we're able to connect in this way, and I can't wait to dig into the contents of this episode with you. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to another Tuesday transmission episode inside the Unapologetic with Jannine MacKinnon podcast. And this episode is for the woman who's lived her life trying to be good or trying to be wild, but never really getting to be yourself. It's for those who have fit themselves into those good girl boxes, or perhaps punched and kicked and pushed others away so they could fit into their rebellious boxes. Perhaps you have lived in different phases of this throughout your life, or perhaps you have stayed in one phase for most of it. I know personally, I flipped between the two for the first 30 years of my life until I was finally able to be with myself, to let myself shine, and to really embody that wild woman archetype. And so that is what we are going to be getting into today. These two different archetypes, the good girl, the rebellious girl, and how they're both two sides of the same coin. They're both masks, either pretending to be someone else to fit in, fear of being judged for who they really are, feeling unworthy to really let themselves shine. They put everyone else's needs ahead of their own. Or on the rebellious side, fearing people not truly loving and accepting them as they are, and so they purposely push people away by being the rebel, by being too loud, too big, because that too muchness is still a mask, not allowing people to really see them for who they are. Both of them are looking for validation in all of the wrong places in different ways. And we can let go of these masks as we come home to ourselves, as we come home to who we truly are and become really unapologetic in our authenticity. That is what the wild woman archetype is. And there is so much freedom and joy and love and connection in allowing yourself to truly shine as you are and to be loved and celebrated for that. And so that is what we will be digging into. And this is touching on a masterclass that I have coming up with Allison from Soulstar Energy Collective. It is the Sacral Awakening Masterclass. And so this is a great way to dip your toes a little bit deeper into this work and really bring it into more of an embodied state. Because I think many of you listen to the podcast, other podcasts, take in books, hear different things, have these conversations. But it's really that embodied piece that allows you to create that more depth and to really feel these different practices and ideas deep in your body so you can really embody it. And so with this masterclass, we are blending our two flavors, mine with the sensual embodiment, Allison's with the intuitive spiritual side. And we're bringing this together to support you in building this connection with yourself, in awakening your sacral in a grounded, supported, embodied way, being guided to connect with your spirit guides to support you from the other realm, and being guided to connect with your sacral energy center in this sacred, beautiful way, and to begin to work with your sacral energy and move it through your body to nourish yourself. You'll have some recordings to be able to take home with you to continue to deepen your practice, continue to deepen your relationship with these pieces, and embody your connection with your sacral even more, because our womanhood lies in our sacral. It is our womb space. That is our connection with the infinite through the womb. It is our connection with our intuition, with our emotions, with our passion, and with our sensuality, which is just really being so present in life. So I would love to have you there. I will leave the link in the show notes for that. It is on Wednesday, April 9th. Of course, there is a recording that will be available for you. And now it's time to shift into the meat of this week's episode, starting with the good girl archetype. So what is the good girl archetype? She is someone who is obedient, quiet, polite, emotionally self-regulating, or I would argue emotionally avoidant or suppressing the emotions, because that's so often the case. And that's part of the disconnect the good girl has with their sacral, because that is our emotional connection center. And so when we suppress our emotions because we don't want to make waves, we want to make everyone else happy, then we're suppressing ourselves. We're suppressing our connection with joy and connection and liveliness. And this is something I know well. Like I said at the beginning, I've walked two sides of this. And I remember growing up this way when I was younger. I was that good girl archetype. I got good grades. I didn't cause any trouble. My parents got divorced, as I've mentioned before, when I was 7, and I was the easy one. I didn't need that much. I could handle what came up. And they would worry more so about my brother. And it's not because I didn't actually need that support. It's not because I wasn't actually feeling all sorts of things inside. It's because I didn't appear that way. I didn't show other people that. I would show that I'm the good girl that gets good grades and doesn't make waves because I don't want undue attention. But the thing is, as I was surviving by pleasing, I was suppressing such big parts of myself. And it led me to feel like I was not understood or cared for, that people really didn't see me for me. And I would hide all sorts of parts of myself for fear of judgment. Just today, I presented at Souk Women in Business about embodied confidence, which ties in really well to this. And I believe I've shared before on the podcast how I've always had this connection with my witchy side. I've loved crystals and stories about werewolves and witches and the mystical. I've had an interest in oracle cards and all different things. And I suppressed that for the majority of my life because I would hear people around me within my family talk a certain way about these things, talk a certain way about psychics or those silly things. And although none of it was directed at me, I still internalized these messages. And that if I showed that I liked these things, then they would think those things about me. And so they must have those feelings about me without knowing, because that is me. And so that's that suppression over and over and over again that really disconnects ourselves from us. That's how so many women end up ticking the boxes of life. They get married, they have the house, they have the kids, they have the career, this and that. And they wake up, look around, and they're not fulfilled. They're not happy. They're barely keeping their head above water. And it's because they spent their whole life living up to expectations, being the good girl archetype, doing what they should do, and not making enough space for what they really want to be doing, what they really love to be doing. And all those years and decades of suppressing what makes them feel alive disconnects them from themselves, disconnects you from your creativity, and disconnects you from your body's wisdom, because you just suppress the fact that you feel tired and that you don't want to do these things, or that you have a bad feeling about this particular person or this particular option. And so you further and further disconnect yourself. And so it takes a bit of a jump start sometimes. It takes a bit of a journey to come back home to your truth. And I'll get into that, but that is really what this good girl archetype is all about. And then there can come a point, not always, I know as part of my personal journey, but there's many that stay within that good girl archetype, but you can move into the rebellious archetype, the rebel. And for me, it was coming to that point where I just felt so misunderstood that no one really knew me, and I was tired of fitting in the boxes, not actually being really acknowledged. I didn't necessarily feel loved and cared about. I'm not saying that I wasn't, but that's how I felt at the time when I was a young teenager. My parents had a lot going on. There's no shade towards them. But I was like, fuck this. Like, why am I doing this? I'm just going to live for me. But it wasn't actually that way. It was just a different mask I was putting on. It was a different side of that same coin. And instead of stuffing myself down, I would put extra things out there to push people away. They still didn't really see who I was. And instead of looking for validation by living up to expectations, I looked for validation at the bottom of a bottle or in someone else's bed by the way they would react to me. And this isn't healthy either. This isn't being free. I wasn't actually being myself.
Do you desire to feel confident in your body and empowered in your sexuality? The Honeypot Meditation is a potent 12-minute visualization to support you in connecting with your sexuality and rewiring your subconscious with the confident, radiant energy you'd love to embody. Download completely free through the link in the show notes and get ready to immerse yourself in a visceral experience as you connect with your sensual, radiant essence.
All of this, the good girl and the rebel, is outsourcing our worth. There's just a quieter way of doing it or a louder way of doing it. But both are responses to suppression. And the rebel can actually have an overactive sacral. And so they can have this very high, insatiable sex drive that actually has a lot of disconnection with it. It's very physical, can get to a point where it's addictive, that filling that void, finding that worthiness in these different experiences. And again, a ton of disassociation is here within the rebel often. I know it certainly was for me. I didn't learn to actually be with myself until I was deep within motherhood and sober for years through pregnancy and breastfeeding and things like that. And so it is just another way of suppressing yourself, suppressing your emotions. Staying busy in different ways does this as well, and that can be on the good girl and the rebellious side. You can be a workaholic or you can be a partyaholic, and both are avoiding really being with yourself. And so in both of these archetypes, the good girl and the rebel, sex is generally not for her. It's performance, it's people-pleasing, or self-numbing. When it comes to the good girl, it's often of service for the partner, feeling like you need to fulfill their needs, even though you're not that in the mood. I see this all the time with clients and in different conversations, is they just kind of lose their libido because they do, and do, and that their cup isn't filled. So they're operating from the state of empty, and their partner really wants this closeness with them. And that's how they're geared, is to feel close through sex. And that's kind of the state of the relationship. And so the woman has more of those acts of service and wants to help fulfill his needs, which is very loving and not fulfilling. And it's not sustainable in a healthy way, because the more we repeat this pattern, the more shut down our body becomes, because our body sees over and over and over and over again that our pleasure doesn't matter, that we're only here to serve them. And so we shut down more and more until it gets to a point where we just can't do it anymore. On the other side, on the rebellious side, it's looking for that validation in all of the wrong places. So it's morphing ourselves to be liked just in a different way, to find that connection, even though it's not real, deep love and connection. And there's that numbing out piece. And so it's not really feeling connected or empowered in your sexuality in either. In both ways, it's for someone else. And I know, again, I experienced this myself. And what we get to do within the realms of sacred sexuality and with awakening our sacral is building this beautiful, sacred relationship with our sexuality for us. It's no longer about performance. It's about feeling. It's a source of our life force. And we are able to reclaim this, to tap into our radiance from it and allow it to fuel us. And through this connection with our sacral, we are able to feel more deeply. You can go down this beautiful journey through sacred sexuality with all of the shadow work and inner child healing, so you can really open your capacity to feel. And the more you can feel those negative feelings that so many of us run away from, the good girl and the rebel, the more we open up our capacity to feel the pleasure, to allow the pleasure and the joy to pour in just because we are worth it, just because we can. It's not something that has to be earned, but that we can simply enjoy the pleasures of life just because. And we access that through feeling, through the connection with our sacral. And then on top of that, there's all those beautiful, surprising side effects, like unlocking your creativity and just this deep, deep presence in all areas of your life. Because the more present you're able to be with yourself, your emotions, and your sensations, the more you're able to be present in all of those simple, everyday moments of life. And the more you're able to be present with your intuition and really unlock your intuition by getting in tune with your body's sensations and signals, you begin to notice those little nudges that your body provided you for so long that you ignored. And instead, you can follow their guidance and come more and more in alignment. You'll notice when something feels off, and you'll trust yourself and choose something else. You'll notice when your body just lights up, and then you speak your desires and have them met. Oh, yes, instead of avoiding it and stuffing it down. Like, that is living life, being able to play just for the sake of playing. Not enough of us do that. That gets shut off, and that's because playing is a part of our creativity and a part of feeling and enjoying. It's all tied to our sacral. And so my personal journey into all of this was crash landing into motherhood. Up until the time I got pregnant, I was still a party girl, maybe slowing down a tiny bit, but definitely still a party girl with my husband and I, with our friends. And it was through getting pregnant that I let that go. So I had to kind of go through the process of being with myself I had smoked weed for, I'm trying to do the math in my head, well over 10 years continuously every single day. So it was a journey to actually be with myself and have those crazy wild dreams. And then going into isolation with 2 kids, 1.5 years apart, breastfeeding both of them for just over a year. And then just really trying to be super mom. So I went from that rebellious party girl into the super mom phase, trying to do everything right, not completely fuck up my kids, make sure I'm feeding them right and parenting them right, and all these expectations of the Instagram mom world that I was very entrenched in as a content creator at the time. And I just couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't happy. It wasn't nice being stuck in this vortex of trying to be the super mom while also feeling exhausted and caught up with everyone else talking about their exhaustion and things like that. So I set out to reclaim myself. I talk about it all over and over again. But that is what changed everything. And I went from feeling exhausted, disconnected, resentful, unworthy. At the time, I had so much of my worth tied into my financial contribution up until the time that I got pregnant. I had worked full time since the age of 15. And so to no longer be bringing in a stronger income while I raised my kids, like that was really hard to go through. And so through this reclamation, I was able to choose myself, to find my self-worth, not by how effective I am or how much I produce or how much money I bring in, but being worthy simply for being me. Being able to tap into my creativity again was so beautiful. And that's through the realm of sacred sexuality, with connecting with my sacral, through doing all the inner child healing. So those protector pieces were no longer holding me back from being too much for fear of judgment, and really able to just play and live and enjoy life. Like, this is the beauty of doing this work. It's so much more than having a spicier time in the bedroom. Sure, that's this awesome side effect of it, and I can tell you all the tips and tricks, but you need to have this foundation of love, safety, and belonging first. You need to have this foundation of feeling, of connecting with your sacral energy in a positive and supportive way, in a sacred way of really using it for yourself. And I have a free meditation, I'll put it in the show notes, the free honeypot meditation, which is a great intro into playing around with this, building that safety within your body of connecting with your sensuality in whatever way that means for you. Then you can play around with things like yoni breathing and connecting with your womb wisdom to rebuild that connection from the inside out. Another really simple practice that Mama Gina talks about in her book Pussy, which I have behind me here. Highly recommend it. I'll link it in the show notes. And that is checking in with your pussy wisdom, your womb wisdom, your oracle, whenever there's a decision. This can be as simple as, what do I want to wear this morning? Maybe you're kind of caught between 2 different things. Check in with your yoni. How does she react? Now, it might be subtle. There might be like an opening when it's more of a yes. There might be more of a closing or a numbness, a disconnection, a nothingness when it's a no. Or it can be even louder. And so just checking in with that. What do I want to wear? What do I want to do today? What coffee should I order? What decision should I make? And just pausing and connecting with yourself instead of spinning through your head with all of these decisions, overthinking things. No, you have woman's wisdom. You have intuition, and you connect that through your sacral. So build a relationship with her, with all of those little decisions throughout the day. Have that meditation, connect with her in this more sacred and juicy way. And if you want to deepen further, there's our masterclass, where you can really deepen this from an embodiment perspective, while also tapping into that spiritual support, tapping into that intuitive side, and then being able to begin to feel into your sexual energy, feeling into your sacral, and seeing how things begin to shift for yourself through that. So we would absolutely love to have you at that masterclass. Again, that is with Allison from Soulstar Energy Collective. It is April 9th, so I will have that link for you. But so much changes when you stop performing, when you let go of this good girl or the rebel, and you say yes to you first. And again, not from a loud pushing people away type of way, but from a grounded and rooted position. You stop shrinking to be digestible, and you start becoming just completely okay with who you are, knowing that other people might judge. They might say weird things. You might not land for some people. That's totally okay, and you become okay with that. And you radiate because your pleasure and power are no longer leaking out to everyone you're trying to please. You're no longer this like cup with all of these holes in it, leaking out this water constantly, no matter how much you try to refill it and do the self-care and pour back into it. No, you're able to start plugging up those holes, plugging up those leaks, because you're no longer giving and giving and giving from this self-sacrificial way. You're able to really pour into yourself through the connection you have with yourself, plugging up those energy leaks, and begin to operate from that state of overflow, because you truly want to serve and give, and because it feels right. And you know what? Sometimes it might not be that nice, but you're doing it out of an act of love and out of an act of choice. And you know how to take care of yourself afterwards. All of this comes from being rooted within yourself, rooted within your sacral. And that becomes your anchor. There's no longer this mask that you're running around like crazy trying to do all these different things. You become rooted. And this is what it means to be the wild woman. Not chaotic, but rooted, honest, and free. She knows who she is. She's not afraid to express it through how she shows up, how she speaks, how she makes art, how she loves, how she fucks. She is fully open and free as herself. And that is what we're here on this world to be, is to just live as our fullest expression, to feel as our fullest expression. So whether you being the good girl, the rebel, or both, you deserve to come home for yourself. If you're resonating with any of this, again, I would love to see you at the Sacral Awakening Masterclass. The links for that are in the show notes. If you want to kind of test the waters with the free honeypot meditation, that is available for you as well. And I just want to leave you with some final words, that this is the space where the good girl gets to rest and the real you gets to rise. So thank you so much for listening, for joining me in this conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you hit subscribe so you can continue to see all of the episodes as they come out every Tuesday morning. Share it with a friend or leave it with a review. Every share, every review or rating really makes a big impact for how this podcast is able to reach more women who are ready to come home to themselves. We recently, I'm so excited, hit the top 10% of podcasts. So I am so grateful that this podcast is making that type of impact. And I want to continue to use this platform to inspire more women to come back home to themselves, to be able to stand and blossom in their truth. So thank you for being a part of that. And I would love to hear what this episode brought up for you. Let's keep the conversation going. Come say hi on Instagram, slide into my DMs at Jannine.MacKinnon. I'd love to hear what resonated for you. What parts of your life were you the good girl, or were you the rebel? How has that affected you where you are now? What do you see through this conversation? And what kind of changes are you ready to make? Are you ready to reclaim? So thank you again. Until next time, keep feeling deeply, living fully, and rising unapologetically. Thank you for joining us inside the Unapologetic with Jannine MacKinnon podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you feel called, I would so appreciate it if you left us a review to help us reach more women and couples so they can experience deeper connection and more expansive pleasure inside and outside the bedroom too. Until next time, embrace your desire and experience your magic.